What truly makes us rational beings? We live in an age that praises intelligence, logic, efficiency, quick thinking. Yet, paradoxically, the world continues to witness irrational behaviors on both individual and collective levels. People make decisions that sabotage their own well-being. Leaders act against the interests of those they serve, and entire societies drift toward emotional chaos, despite having access to more knowledge than ever before. This contradiction begs a deeper question. Is intelligence, as we commonly define it, enough to guide our lives? Or is there another kind of intelligence, one quieter, less celebrated, but infinitely more vital, that actually determines how rational we are? This is where emotional intelligence enters the picture. It challenges the idea that being rational means being cold, detached, or purely logical. It suggests that without emotional awareness, we are not truly rational. We are just reactive minds, often controlled by unexamined fears and impulses. In this video, we'll explore the subtle war between emotional intelligence and what we'll call dangerous stupidity, the kind that wears the mask of logic but hides chaos underneath. And perhaps by the end, we'll discover that reason is not what we thought it was. It's much more human and much more fragile. If reason is more fragile and human than we imagined, then emotional intelligence might be the key to understanding its true nature. Coined and popularized by psychologist Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence refers to the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and use emotions in a constructive way. Unlike IQ, which measures cognitive abilities, emotional intelligence, or EQ, dives into the depth of our emotional lives. It's not just about what we know, but how we handle what we feel, and how that shapes our thoughts and actions. Goleman outlines 5 essential components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Self-awareness allows us to perceive our emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Self-regulation gives us the strength to pause before reacting. Motivation drives us forward with purpose, even in the face of difficulty. Empathy connects us to others beyond mere sympathy, and social skills help us build healthy, balanced relationships. But the roots of this wisdom go far beyond modern psychology. Aristotle, over 2,000 years ago, spoke of phronesis, practical wisdom, as the highest form of human virtue. It is not cold intellect, but rather the ability to act rightly in complex emotional situations. For Aristotle, reason wasn't complete without emotion. They were partners in a dance of ethical living. Imagine a surgeon with perfect technical knowledge but no empathy, or a CEO who can solve problems brilliantly but destroys morale. Without emotional intelligence, even the brightest mind can become destructive, not because it lacks knowledge, but because it lacks understanding. Real-life examples surround us. Think of a teacher who manages a disruptive classroom not through shouting, but by identifying the emotional needs behind the behavior. Or a parent who doesn't just react to a child's tantrum, but meets it with patience and insight. These are not acts of softness, they are acts of clarity. Emotional intelligence, then, is not opposed to reason. It is its foundation. It is what gives reason a soul, what turns cleverness into wisdom. If emotional intelligence forms the soul of reason, then its absence creates a terrifying vacuum, a space where logic becomes weaponized and intelligence turns against itself. This is where dangerous stupidity begins. Dangerous stupidity is not about low IQ. In fact, some of the most catastrophic decisions in history were made by highly intelligent people. It's about the refusal, or inability, to integrate emotion, empathy, and self-awareness into one's thinking. It's when intellect is used to rationalize fear, pride, or cruelty. It's logic without conscience. Philosopher Hannah Arendt coined the phrase, the banality of evil, after observing Nazi bureaucrats during the Holocaust. They weren't monsters. They were ordinary men, frighteningly rational, performing horrific acts under the guise of duty and order. Their actions weren't driven by passion, but by a chilling kind of obedience, one that operated without reflection, compassion, or emotional depth. This is dangerous stupidity in its purest form. Friedrich Nietzsche, too, warned of this. He saw how the so-called rational man often acted from unconscious instincts, cloaked in reason, but driven by resentment, fear, and the will to dominate. When people use logic to justify hatred or control, they are not being rational. They are being cleverly irrational. In everyday life, we see this when someone wins an argument by facts, but loses all trust and connection. When a person uses truth as a weapon to humiliate, or policy to oppress, or when institutions enforce rules that make sense on paper but destroy lives in practice. This kind of stupidity is dangerous precisely because it masquerades as intelligence. It hides behind credentials, titles, data, and legal language. But beneath it, there is no emotional wisdom, only calculation. Psychologically, this behavior is rooted in a disconnection from the self. Without emotional literacy, people become reactive, defensive, and blind to their own inner contradictions. They mistake cold control for clarity, and in doing so, they become instruments of damage, not from malice but from unawareness. The lesson is clear. Reason without emotional intelligence is not just incomplete, it's unstable. And when such reason is given power, it doesn't just fail, it destroys. If reason without emotion is unstable, why do we still cling to the idea of pure rationality? The myth of pure rationality has deep roots in Western thought. From Descartes' "I think, therefore I am" to the Enlightenment's celebration of objective reason, we've inherited a worldview that separates mind from heart, logic from feeling, intellect from intuition. We're taught that the most rational decisions are the ones untouched by emotion, as if feelings were pollutants rather than data. But this is an illusion. Neuroscience tells a different story. Studies by Antonio Damasio, a renowned neurologist, showed that patients with brain damage in areas responsible for emotion could still think logically, but they couldn't make good decisions. They could list the pros and cons of every option, but they were paralyzed, unable to choose. Without emotion, there was no value, no meaning, no direction. This reveals something profound. Emotions are not the enemy of reason. They are what give reason its shape, its relevance. A mind that tries to be purely rational is like a compass without a magnet. It spins, but it doesn't point anywhere. Moreover, emotional signals help us detect danger, injustice, or love. They tell us when something matters. Suppressing them in the name of rationality doesn't make us wise. It makes us disconnected. The idea of a cold, purely rational human being is not a model of strength. It's a fantasy. And often, it's a dangerous one, because those who deny their emotions are often ruled by them in disguise. So the question is no longer whether emotion interferes with reason, but how it informs it, and whether we're brave enough to listen. When we embrace the emotional dimension of reason, we begin to understand emotional intelligence not only as a tool for connection, but as a kind of internal defense system, one that protects us from the pitfalls of self-deception, impulsivity, and harmful reasoning. Emotional intelligence builds resilience. It allows us to pause in moments of tension and ask, what am I really feeling, and why? This pause is small, but it changes everything. Instead of reacting from fear or pride, we respond with awareness. We create space between stimulus and response, which Viktor Frankl called the birthplace of freedom. In relationships, EQ helps us listen more deeply, communicate more clearly, and recognize the emotional undercurrents that words often hide. It shields us from misinterpretation and assumptions, two major sources of conflict and disconnection. Cognitively, it sharpens our thinking. A person who is emotionally attuned can detect bias, challenge internal narratives, and accept uncomfortable truths. They are less likely to fall into black and white thinking or seek confirmation for what they already believe. Emotionally intelligent people are not perfect, but they are safer, to themselves and to others, because they are less likely to be hijacked by fear, ego, or insecurity. They don't hide their emotions, they integrate them. This integration gives rise to what psychologists call adaptive intelligence, the ability to meet life's complexity with nuance, rather than with rigid rules or simplistic solutions. In a chaotic world, this is not just a skill, it's a form of wisdom. And as we'll see in the next section, wisdom is the final evolution of emotional intelligence. It's where feeling and thinking finally meet. If intelligence is the ability to solve problems and emotional intelligence is the ability to feel wisely, then rationality, in its highest form, is something much deeper than logic. It is the integration of head and heart, reason and emotion, thought and meaning. True rationality isn't just about being right, it's about being real. It doesn't seek to dominate, but to understand. It embraces complexity, contradiction, and ambiguity, not as threats, but as essential parts of the human experience. The rational person is not the one who suppresses their feelings, but the one who can navigate them, who can say, I am angry, but I will not act in anger, or I am afraid, but I will not let fear choose for me. This kind of rationality is not cold, it's courageous, because it demands that we look inward, confront discomfort, and choose growth over comfort. It requires emotional intelligence at every step. In the end, being rational means being fully human, and that humanity, messy, emotional, flawed, is not the enemy of reason, but its source. We live in a world that often confuses intelligence with wisdom and logic with truth. But as we've seen, real rationality is not found in the absence of emotion. It's found in the mastery of it. It's not about removing the heart from the equation, but learning to listen to it. Emotional intelligence isn't a luxury. It's not soft. It's the bedrock of rational thought, moral clarity, and healthy human interaction. Without it, intelligence becomes arrogance, logic becomes manipulation, and decisions, personal or political, become destructive. So what truly makes us rational beings? It's not our ability to calculate or debate. It's our capacity to feel with insight, think with humility, and act with conscience. In a time when dangerous stupidity often wears the mask of confidence and control, the real act of rebellion is to be emotionally wise, to cultivate empathy, patience, and self-awareness in a world that rushes toward judgment and division. Let us then redefine what it means to be intelligent. Let us elevate emotional intelligence not as a secondary trait, but as the core of rationality itself. Because only when we unite our minds and hearts can we begin to think and live clearly.